The morning sun streamed through the kitchen windows as 10-year-old Damon finished his cereal. His mother, Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, was already dressed in her business suit, checking emails on her phone while sipping coffee from her favorite mug. She had an important meeting that morning, but there was one small task that needed to be handled at the bank. "Damon, honey, I need you to do something for me today," she said, setting down her phone. "Can you take these papers to Central City Bank after school? Just give them to any manager there." Damon looked at the thick manila envelope his mother placed on the counter. It was sealed with tape and had confidential board documents written across the front in her neat handwriting. He had delivered things for his mother before, mostly to her office or to neighbors, but never to a bank. "What's in it?" he asked, curious as any 10-year-old would be. "Just some boring business papers," Carmen replied with a smile. "Nothing exciting. The manager will know what to do with them. It's very important that you don't open it or let anyone else open it, okay?" Damon nodded seriously. His mother trusted him with important tasks, and he never wanted to let her down. "Should I go right after school?" "Yes, but take the bus. Don't walk. The bank is on 5th Street, right next to that pizza place you like. You've been there with me before, remember?" Damon did remember. Central City Bank was a huge building with marble floors and tall ceilings that made him feel tiny. The security guards always smiled at him when he came with his mother, and the tellers were friendly. It seemed like an easy enough job. "I'll drop you off at school, and Mrs. Peterson next door will pick you up. She knows you need to stop at the bank first before coming home," Carmen explained, gathering her briefcase and car keys. The school day dragged on slower than usual. Damon kept thinking about the envelope in his backpack. During lunch, his best friend Tyler asked what was making him so distracted. "I have to deliver some papers to the bank for my mom," Damon explained, unwrapping his sandwich. "By yourself? That's cool. My mom never lets me go anywhere alone except to the corner store," Tyler said, clearly impressed. "It's not a big deal. I've been there lots of times," Damon replied, though secretly he felt proud that his mother trusted him with such an important task. When the final bell rang, Damon hurried to meet Mrs. Peterson at the pickup area. She was a kind elderly woman who sometimes helped out when Carmen had to work late. Her own grandchildren lived far away, so she enjoyed spending time with Damon. "Ready for your important mission?" Mrs. Peterson asked with a wink as they walked to her car. "Mom told you about it?" "She mentioned you had a stop to make. Don't worry, I'll wait in the car while you go inside. Banks make me nervous with all their fancy decorations." The drive to Central City Bank took about 15 minutes through the busy downtown area. Damon watched the tall buildings pass by, feeling more grown up with each block. When they pulled up in front of the impressive stone building, his stomach fluttered with nervous excitement. "I'll park right here where you can see me," Mrs. Peterson said, pointing to a spot across the street. "Take your time, but don't dawdle. Your mother will want to know you completed your task safely." Damon adjusted his backpack straps and walked toward the bank's entrance. The heavy glass doors were held open by uniformed doormen who nodded politely as he passed. Inside, the lobby was just as impressive as he remembered, with its high ceilings, gleaming marble floors, and crystal chandeliers that sparkled like diamonds. Several customers stood in various lines, some at the teller windows and others waiting to speak with bank officers at desks scattered throughout the open floor. Everyone looked very professional in their business clothes, and Damon suddenly felt self-conscious in his school uniform of khaki pants and a blue polo shirt. He approached the information desk where a middle-aged woman with perfectly styled blonde hair was typing on her computer. Her nameplate read, "Linda Patterson, Customer Service." She wore a crisp white blouse and a string of pearls that caught the light when she moved. "Excuse me," Damon said politely, standing on his toes to be seen over the tall counter. Linda glanced up briefly, her eyes scanning the area behind Damon as if looking for an adult. "Yes? Are you looking for your parents, sweetheart?" "No, ma'am." "I need to give these papers to a manager, please," Damon replied, patting his backpack where the envelope was safely stored. Linda's perfectly penciled eyebrows rose slightly. "Papers? What kind of papers would a child have for our managers?" "They're from my mother. She said any manager would know what to do with them." The woman's expression shifted from polite confusion to mild annoyance. I'm sorry, but children can't just walk in here claiming to have business with our managers. Where's your mother? She's at work. She asked me to bring these because she couldn't come herself. Linda looked around the lobby again, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Well, I can't allow you to disturb our managers without adult supervision. Perhaps you should call your mother and ask her to come in person. Damon felt his confidence starting to waver. His mother had made it seem like such a simple task, but this woman was acting like he was asking for something impossible. But she specifically told me to bring them today. They're important business documents. Business documents? Linda's tone became more skeptical. I highly doubt a 10-year-old boy would be trusted with legitimate business documents. Are you sure you haven't made some mistake? Other customers began to notice the conversation. An elderly man in the expensive suit glanced over with mild interest, while a woman with shopping bags slowed her pace to listen. Damon felt heat rising in his cheeks as he realized he was becoming the center of attention. There's no mistake, he said firmly, remembering his mother's lessons about speaking confidently and respectfully to adults. My mother gave me specific instructions to deliver these papers to a manager today. Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. She clearly didn't believe him, and her voice took on the tone adults used when they thought children were lying. Young man, I think you need to go back outside and find the adult who's supposed to be supervising you. Our managers are very busy people, and they don't have time for games. Damon's heart sank. This wasn't going at all like he had expected. The friendly bank he remembered from visits with his mother suddenly felt cold and unwelcoming. But he knew his mother was counting on him, and he wasn't about to give up so easily. This isn't a game, he said quietly but firmly. These really are important papers, and my mother really did ask me to bring them here. As Linda opened her mouth to respond, Damon noticed a security guard starting to move in their direction. The simple task his mother had given him was turning into something much more complicated, and he had no idea how to fix it. The security guard who had been watching from across the lobby was a tall, broad-shouldered man named Officer Brooks. He had worked at Central City Bank for over 15 years and prided himself on being able to spot trouble before it started. When he saw a young boy arguing with Linda at the customer service desk, his instincts told him to investigate. Is there a problem here, Mrs. Patterson? Officer Brooks asked as he approached, his hand resting casually on his radio. Linda looked relieved to see him. This child claims he has business documents to deliver to one of our managers, but he's here completely alone. I've explained that children can't conduct business without adult supervision, but he's being quite persistent. Damon looked up at the imposing security guard, feeling smaller than ever. I'm just trying to deliver papers for my mother. She told me to bring them here after school. Officer Brooks studied Damon with experienced eyes. The boy was well-dressed and polite, but something about the situation didn't sit right with him. In his years of security work, he had seen all kinds of scams and unusual situations. Children were sometimes used by adults to create distractions, or to access buildings where they might not be welcome. What's your mother's name, son? Brooks asked in a stern voice. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, Damon replied immediately. And she just happened to send you here alone with important business documents? The guard's tone suggested he found this hard to believe. Yes, sir. She had an important meeting and couldn't come herself. Brooks exchanged a meaningful look with Linda. What kind of documents are we talking about? Damon shifted his backpack to his front and carefully pulled out the manila envelope. These. She said to give them to any manager and that they would know what to do with them. The guard took the envelope and examined it closely. The writing on the front was neat and professional, but that didn't prove anything. He had seen forged documents before, and even children could be coached to act as accomplices. Mind if I take a look inside? Brooks asked, starting to peel back the tape. No, wait, Damon said quickly, reaching for the envelope. My mother said not to let anyone open it except the manager who's supposed to get it. This response made both adults even more suspicious. Brooks held the envelope higher, out of Damon's reach. Now why would that be, I wonder? What's so secret that a child can't know what he's carrying? I don't know, Damon admitted. She just said they were boring business papers and that I shouldn't open them. By now, several other customers had stopped what they were doing to watch the scene unfold. A woman where their teenage daughter whispered something and shook her head disapprovingly. An elderly couple moved to a different part of the lobby, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Linda decided to escalate the matter. "I think we should call Mr. Henderson," she said, referring to the assistant manager who was currently on duty. Brooks nodded. "Good idea, and maybe we should contact the police too, just to be safe." "The police?" Damon's voice cracked with worry. "Why would you call the police? I haven't done anything wrong." "We don't know that yet, do we?" Brooks replied. "Children don't usually show up at banks carrying mysterious documents. For all we know, someone could be using you to commit fraud or identity theft." Damon felt panic rising in his chest. This was nothing like what his mother had described. She had made it sound like the simplest thing in the world. But now these adults were treating him like a criminal. "Please, can you just call my mother? She'll explain everything." "We'll see about that," Linda said, picking up her phone. "Mr. Henderson, could you come to the front desk, please? We have a situation that requires your attention." While they waited for the assistant manager, more bank employees began to take notice. Two tellers stretched their necks to see what was happening, and a loan officer emerged from his office to investigate the commotion. Damon felt like he was in a fishbowl, with everyone staring at him and whispering among themselves. Mr. Henderson arrived within minutes. He was a thin man in his 40s with wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous manner. He had been having a particularly stressful day dealing with computer problems and difficult customers, and the last thing he wanted was another crisis. "What seems to be the problem?" Henderson asked, adjusting his tie. Linda quickly explained the situation, emphasizing the suspicious nature of a child attempting to deliver confidential documents without adult supervision. Officer Brooks added his concerns about potential fraud or criminal activity. Henderson examined the envelope with a frown. "Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, you said. I don't recognize that name. Is she one of our customers?" "I don't know," Linda admitted. "I didn't check the system because the child couldn't provide proper identification or account information." "My mother doesn't bank here," Damon said quietly. "She just asked me to deliver the papers." This revelation made the adults even more suspicious. Henderson's frown deepened. "So your mother, who isn't even our customer, sent you here alone to deliver documents to managers who don't know her? That makes absolutely no sense." "I'm just doing what she asked me to do," Damon insisted, his voice beginning to shake with frustration and fear. "Well, we can't accept documents from unknown parties, especially when delivered by unaccompanied minors," Henderson declared. "Officer Brooks, I think you should take this child to the security office while we figure out what's really going on here." "No, please," Damon said, backing away slightly. "Just call my mother. Her number is in my backpack. She'll tell you this is all legitimate." But the adults had already made up their minds. In their view, the whole situation was too strange to be innocent. A child showing up alone with sealed documents from someone who wasn't even their customer seemed like the beginning of some elaborate scheme. "Come along, son," Officer Brooks said, reaching for Damon's arm. "We're going to sort this out properly." As they began to move toward the security office, Damon caught sight of Mrs. Peterson's car through the window. She was still waiting, patiently, completely unaware of the trouble brewing inside the bank. He wished desperately that he could signal to her somehow, but the security guard's firm grip on his shoulder made it clear that he wasn't going anywhere. "This is all a big misunderstanding," Damon said one more time, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's what we're going to find out," Henderson replied coldly. The other customers watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern as the young boy was escorted away from the main lobby. Some felt sorry for him, while others assumed he must have done something wrong to warrant such treatment. None of them could have imagined the shock that was coming when the truth finally came to light. The security office was a small, windowless room behind the main lobby, furnished with nothing more than a metal desk, 2 chairs, and a filing cabinet. Officer Brooks directed Damon to sit in the smaller chair while he took his position behind the desk, the sealed envelope placed prominently between them like evidence in a crime. Now then, Brooks began, pulling out a notepad. Let's start from the beginning. What's your full name? Damon Rodriguez, the boy replied, his voice steadier than he felt inside. Age? 10. Address? Damon provided his home address, which Brooks wrote down carefully. The security guard then asked for his mother's work address, phone number, and any other contact information. With each question, Damon became more confused about why this simple task had become such an ordeal. And you say your mother asked you to deliver these papers? Brooks continued, tapping the envelope with his pen. Yes, sir. She had an important meeting and couldn't come herself. What kind of meeting? I don't know. Business stuff. Damon shrugged, the way any 10-year-old would when asked about adult affairs that didn't interest him. This answer seemed to frustrate Brooks even more. You don't find it strange that your mother would trust a child with confidential business documents but not tell you anything about them? She said they were boring, Damon repeated for what felt like the 100th time. Meanwhile, Mr. Henderson had returned to the main lobby to consult with Linda about their next steps. The bank's policy manual didn't exactly cover situations involving unaccompanied minors claiming to carry business documents, but Henderson was determined to handle things by the book. Have you tried looking up this Dr. Rodriguez in our system? He asked Linda. I ran a quick search but didn't find any accounts under that name, she replied. Of course, that doesn't mean much. She could bank elsewhere or use a different name. Professionally. Still suspicious, though. Henderson mused. What legitimate business would send a child to deliver documents to a bank where they don't even have an account? Back in the security office, Officer Brooks had finished his initial questioning and was now studying Damon with the intensity of a detective. I'm going to ask you one more time, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer. Are you absolutely certain that your mother asked you to bring these papers here? Damon met his gaze directly. Yes, sir, I'm absolutely certain. And you have no idea what's inside the envelope? No, sir. You realize that lying to bank security is a serious matter? This question stung. Damon had been raised to always tell the truth, and the suggestion that he was lying hurt more than he expected. I'm not lying, he said firmly. Everything I've told you is the truth. Brooks leaned back in his chair, clearly not convinced. Well then, I suppose we'll have to call your mother and verify your story. Thank you, Damon said with relief. Her number is in my backpack. But as Brooks reached for the phone, Mr. Henderson appeared in the doorway. Officer Brooks, could I speak with you privately for a moment? The two men stepped outside the office, leaving Damon alone with his thoughts. Through the thin walls, he could hear them talking in low voices, though he couldn't make out the specific words. Their tone suggested they were discussing something serious, and it probably wasn't good news for him. When they returned, Henderson took the second chair while Brooks remained standing. Damon, we've decided that this situation requires more investigation before we can release you or accept these documents. What kind of investigation? Damon asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. We need to verify that these documents are legitimate and that you're really authorized to deliver them, Henderson explained. Until we can do that, you'll need to remain here with Officer Brooks. But Mrs. Peterson is waiting for me outside. She'll be worried if I don't come back soon. Who is Mrs. Peterson? Brooks asked, suddenly alert. My neighbor. She drove me here and said she'd wait in the car. The two men exchanged another meaningful look. So, there is an adult with you, Henderson said. Why didn't you mention this? Before? You didn't ask. She's just giving me a ride. She doesn't know anything about the papers. We'll need to speak with her as well, Brooks decided. Henderson, can you go outside and ask this Mrs. Peterson to come in? While Henderson went to fetch Mrs. Peterson, Brooks began examining the envelope more closely. He held it up to the light, trying to see if he could make out any of the contents without actually opening it. The paper was too thick, but he thought he could detect multiple pages inside. Your mother must trust you a great deal to give you something this important, he said almost to himself. She does trust me, Damon replied with quiet pride. I've never lost anything she's given me to take care of. A few minutes later, Henderson returned with Mrs. Peterson, who looked confused and concerned. She was a small, elderly woman with gray hair and kind eyes that immediately found Damon in the security office. "Damon, sweetheart, what's going on?" she asked, rushing to his side. "They won't let me deliver the papers Mom asked me to bring," Damon explained. Mrs. Peterson turned to face the two men with surprising firmness, despite her gentle appearance. "Excuse me, but why is this child being detained?" his mother asked. "Him to make a simple delivery, and I agreed to drive him here." "Mrs. Peterson, is it?" Henderson began. "We're concerned about the nature of these documents and the unusual circumstances of their delivery. Do you know anything about what the boy is carrying?" "Only that his mother asked him to drop off some papers at the bank. Carmen is a very responsible parent. She wouldn't ask Damon to do anything inappropriate." "Carmen Rodriguez?" Brooks asked, writing down the name. "Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, yes. She's a lovely woman and a wonderful mother." Henderson and Brooks exchanged yet another look. The story was becoming more consistent, but they still weren't satisfied. "Mrs. Peterson, we're going to need to contact Dr. Rodriguez directly to verify this story before we can allow the boy to leave." Mrs. Peterson's confusion was evident. "I don't understand why this is such a problem. Can't you simply accept the papers and be done with it? Bank security requires verification of all document deliveries, especially when made by minors," Henderson said, though this was not actually true. He was making up policy as he went along. "Well then, call Carmen immediately," Mrs. Peterson said with growing irritation. "Her number is programmed into Damon's phone." Brooks held out his hand. "We'll need to see that phone." Damon reluctantly pulled his phone from his backpack and showed them his mother's contact information. Brooks copied down the number, then stepped outside to make the call while Henderson and Mrs. Peterson watched over Damon. But when Brooks returned a few minutes later, his expression was grim. "The number goes straight to voicemail. The message says Dr. Rodriguez is in an important meeting and will return calls as soon as possible." "See?" Damon said hopefully. "I told you she was in a meeting." But instead of reassuring the adults, this development only made them more suspicious. In their minds, the story was becoming more elaborate and harder to believe. They decided that more drastic measures were needed to get to the bottom of this mystery. Dr. Carmen Rodriguez sat in the elegant boardroom on the 15th floor of Central City Bank, surrounded by 12 other board members as they reviewed the quarterly financial reports. As the majority owner and chairwoman of the board, her attention was focused entirely on the presentation being given by the chief financial officer. "Our third quarter profits have exceeded projections by 18%, the CFO announced, clicking to the next slide. "This puts us on track for our most successful year since the acquisition." Carmen nodded approvingly. It had been 3 years since she had purchased the failing bank and transformed it into one of the most profitable financial institutions in the city. The turnaround had required countless hours of work, significant investment, and the complete restructuring of the bank's operations and culture. Her phone, which she had silenced for the meeting, buzzed quietly in her purse. She ignored it, as she always did during board meetings. Nothing was important enough to interrupt these quarterly sessions where critical decisions about the bank's future were made. "The commercial lending division has also shown remarkable growth," the CFO continued. "We've approved over $200 million in new business loans this quarter alone." As the presentation continued, Carmen occasionally glanced at her watch. She hoped Damon had successfully delivered the board documents to one of the managers downstairs. The papers contained sensitive financial information that needed to be filed in the bank's secure records before the end of the business day. 3 floors below, the situation in the security office had reached a critical point. Mr. Henderson had grown increasingly frustrated with his inability to reach Dr. Rodriguez, and Officer Brooks was beginning to suspect they were dealing with something more serious than a simple misunderstanding. "I think we need to call the police," Brooks announced after his third attempt to reach Carmen's voicemail. Mrs. Peterson looked shocked. "The police? For a 10-year-old boy delivering papers?" "Ma'am, we have protocols to follow when dealing with suspicious activities," Henderson explained. "A child showing up alone with confidential documents for people he doesn't know? at a bank where his supposed mother doesn't even have an account, raises serious red flags. Damon felt his heart pounding in his chest. Please don't call the police. I haven't done anything wrong. Just wait for my mother to call back. Son, we've been waiting for over an hour, Brooks replied. If your mother was really expecting you to make this delivery, she would have made sure we could reach her. But she's in an important meeting. She always turns off her phone during meetings. The adults exchanged skeptical looks. They had heard enough excuses and were ready to let the authorities handle the situation. Henderson reached for his phone to dial 911 when suddenly, the security office door opened. Excuse me, what's going on here? Everyone turned to see a tall, impeccably dressed woman standing in the doorway. She wore a navy blue business suit and carried herself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in charge. Her dark hair was pulled back in a professional style, and her intelligent eyes quickly took in the scene before her. Ma'am, this is a restricted area, Officer Brooks said. You'll need to return to the main lobby. The woman stepped fully into the room, her gaze settling on Damon. I'm Dr. Carmen Rodriguez, and that's my son. Now would someone please explain why he's being held in a security office? The effect of her words was immediate and dramatic. Henderson's face went pale, and Brooks actually took a step backward. They both recognized the name, of course, but neither had ever seen the bank's owner in person. She was something of a legend in banking circles, known for her brilliant business mind and her ability to turn failing institutions into profitable enterprises. Dr. Rodriguez? Henderson stammered. That is to say, Mom. Damon jumped up from his chair and ran to his mother's side. They wouldn't let me deliver the papers. They thought I was lying about everything. Carmen placed a protective arm around her son's shoulders, while fixing the two men with a steely gaze. Perhaps you'd like to explain why my 10-year-old son has been detained for over an hour for attempting to deliver documents that I specifically asked him to bring to this bank. Mrs. Peterson, who had been silent during this exchange, now found her voice. Carmen, thank goodness you're here. These men have been treating Damon like a criminal. Henderson struggled to find words that might salvage the situation. Dr. Rodriguez, we had no way of knowing. The circumstances seemed suspicious. Suspicious? Carmen's voice was dangerously quiet. What exactly was suspicious about a child attempting to deliver sealed documents to bank management? Brooks cleared his throat nervously. Ma'am, the boy couldn't provide proper identification, and we weren't able to verify his story immediately. So, rather than following standard protocol for document delivery, you decided to detain a minor in a security office. Carmen's tone suggested she was fighting to maintain her composure. We were just being cautious, Henderson said weakly. Carmen looked at the manila envelope still sitting on Brooks's desk. Are those the board documents I asked my son to deliver? Yes, ma'am, Brooks replied, quickly handing over the envelope. Carmen examined the envelope and noted that the seal had been tampered with. Did you open these? We thought it was necessary to verify, Henderson began. These are confidential. Board documents containing sensitive financial information about this bank, Carmen said, her voice rising slightly. You had no authorization to examine their contents. The room fell silent, except for the sound of the air conditioning system, humming overhead. Both Henderson and Brooks realized they had made a catastrophic error in judgment, but the full extent of their mistake was only beginning to dawn on them. Carmen looked around the small security office, taking in the sterile environment where her son had been held. Damon, are you all right? Did anyone hurt you or treat you inappropriately? I'm okay, Mom. They just kept asking me the same questions over and over and wouldn't believe me when I told them the truth. Carmen's expression hardened as she turned back to the two men. Gentlemen, I think we need to have a very serious conversation about what happened here today. But first, I want to make sure my son gets home safely. She turned to Mrs. Peterson. Thank you for staying with him. Would you mind taking him home? I'll be along shortly. Of course, dear, Mrs. Peterson replied. Come along, Damon. As Damon and Mrs. Peterson left the security office, Carmen remained behind with Henderson and Brooks. The two men stood awkwardly, knowing they were about to face consequences they couldn't even begin to imagine. "Now then," Carmen said, closing the door behind her, "let's discuss how two of my employees decided that racially profiling a 10-year-old child was an appropriate response to a routine document delivery." The conversation in the security office lasted exactly 12 minutes. When Dr. Carmen Rodriguez emerged, her expression was calm but resolute. Henderson and Brooks remained behind, both men looking as though they had just received news of their own professional execution. Carmen walked through the main lobby with measured steps, noting how several employees and customers watched her with curious expressions. Word had begun to spread that something significant was happening, though most people didn't yet understand the full scope of the situation. She approached Linda Patterson at the customer service desk, the same woman who had first dismissed her son's request for help. Linda looked up with a professional smile, completely unaware of who she was addressing. "Good afternoon. How may I assist you today?" Linda asked cheerfully. "I'm Dr. Carmen Rodriguez. I believe you spoke with my son earlier about delivering some documents." Linda's smile faltered as the pieces began to fall into place. "Your son? You mean the little boy who was here with the envelope?" "That's correct. The little boy you refused to help and treated with suspicion simply because he was young and unaccompanied." I was just following procedure," Linda stammered. "We have to be careful about accepting documents from unknown parties." Carmen placed the envelope on the counter. "Ms. Patterson, these are confidential board documents that needed to be filed in our secure records. My son was acting as my authorized representative, a fact that would have been immediately apparent if anyone had bothered to treat him with basic courtesy and respect." The color drained from Linda's face as she realized the magnitude of her error. "I didn't know. He didn't say. He told you exactly what he was asked to tell you. The failure was not in his communication but in your willingness to listen." By now, other employees had gathered at a respectful distance, sensing that something important was unfolding. Carmen raised her voice slightly so that everyone could hear her next words. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want you all to witness what happened here today. A 10-year-old child was detained, questioned, and treated as a potential criminal simply because the adults in this building made assumptions based on his age and appearance." A murmur rippled through the crowd of employees and customers. Some looked confused, others appeared uncomfortable, and a few nodded in recognition of what Carmen was describing. "This child happens to be my son," Carmen continued, "but that fact is irrelevant to the larger issue. Every person who enters this bank deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their age, race, or appearance." She paused, allowing her words to sink in before continuing. "Mr. Henderson and Officer Brooks have been terminated, effective immediately. Their actions today violated not only our corporate policies but basic principles of human decency." Several employees gasped audibly. Terminations were rare at Central City Bank, especially when announced so publicly. Carmen turned her attention back to Linda. "Ms. Patterson, you will be suspended without pay pending a full investigation into your conduct. You will also be required to complete sensitivity training before any decision is made about your future employment here." Linda opened her mouth to protest but thought better of it. The woman standing before her owned the bank and arguing would only make her situation worse. "Furthermore," Carmen announced to the assembled crowd, "all bank employees will participate in mandatory diversity and inclusion training within the next 30 days. We will also be implementing new policies to ensure that every customer is treated with equal respect and courtesy." The lobby had grown completely silent, except for the soft background music that always played during business hours. Carmen's words carried the weight of absolute authority, and everyone present understood that significant changes were coming. "I want to be very clear about something," Carmen said, her voice carrying to every corner of the lobby. "This bank's success is built on trust, respect, and service to our community. When we fail to live up to those values, we fail in our fundamental mission." She picked up the envelope from the counter and looked around the room one final time. "I expect every employee of this bank to remember what happened here today. More importantly, I expect you to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again." With that, Carmen walked toward the elevator that would take her back to the executive offices. As the doors closed behind her, the lobby erupted in hushed conversations, as employees and customers tried to process what they had just witnessed. 3 weeks later, Damon returned to Central City Bank for the first time since the incident. He was accompanying his mother to a ribbon-cutting ceremony for the bank's new Community Outreach Center, a facility designed to provide financial education and services to underserved populations. The changes in the bank were immediately apparent. The staff moved with a different energy, and the atmosphere felt more welcoming and inclusive. New posters promoting diversity and community service decorated the walls, and several employees wore pins indicating they had completed the new sensitivity training. Linda Patterson was not among the staff present. She had chosen to resign rather than complete the required training, believing that the consequences for her actions were unfair. Her replacement, a young man named Kevin Torres, greeted every customer with genuine warmth and attention. "Good morning, Dr. Rodriguez," Kevin said, when he saw Carmen and Damon approaching. "And you must be Damon. I've heard a lot about you." Damon smiled shyly. "Good things, I hope." "Very good things. Your mother talks about you all the time during board meetings." The ribbon-cutting ceremony was attended by community leaders, local media, and dozens of bank employees. Carmen spoke about the importance of serving all members of the community and ensuring that everyone felt welcome and valued. "This outreach center represents our commitment to being more than just a place to conduct financial transactions," she said to the gathered crowd. "We want to be a true partner in building stronger, more inclusive communities." After the ceremony, as Carmen and Damon were preparing to leave, one of the tellers approached them. She was an older woman named Mrs. Chen who had worked at the bank for over 20 years. "Dr. Rodriguez, I wanted to thank you for what you did," she said quietly. "I've seen too many situations over the years where people were judged unfairly because of how they looked or where they came from. It took courage to make such dramatic changes." Carmen nodded appreciatively. "Change is never easy, but it's necessary if we want to build the kind of institution we can all be proud of." Mrs. Chen turned to Damon. "And young man, you should be proud of yourself too. You handled a very difficult situation with remarkable maturity." As they walked to the car, Damon asked his mother a question that had been on his mind for weeks. "Mom, do you think what happened will really change anything? Or will people just be more careful about getting caught?" Carmen considered the question carefully before answering. "Some people will only change their behavior because they have to, not because they want to. But others will genuinely learn and grow from what happened. The important thing is that we've sent a clear message about what kind of behavior is acceptable. And what about the people who don't want to change? Those people will eventually find that there's no place for them here," Carmen replied firmly. "A business is only as good as the people who work there, and I intend to make sure this bank employs people who share our values." 6 months later, Central City Bank was recognized by the State Banking Commission for its outstanding community outreach programs and inclusive hiring practices. The incident that had started with a simple document delivery had ultimately led to positive changes that benefited the entire community. Damon, now 11 years old and more confident than ever, occasionally helped his mother with small tasks at the bank. But these days, when he walked through the lobby, every employee knew exactly who he was and treated him with the respect and kindness that every customer deserved. The lesson was clear to everyone who worked there. In a truly successful business, every person matters, regardless of their age, appearance, or background. And sometimes it takes the courage of a 10-year-old boy and the decisive action of a determined mother to remind adults of this fundamental truth.